Hi, welcome to another episode of Talk Data to Me with myself, Craig Stewart from Dalebrook Media. Getting into the swing of things, had a couple of these done already this week, and I'm really looking forward to my next conversation with Jacques, who's the CEO of IntelliNexus down in Cape Town. Jacques, how's it going? Thanks so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig, for having me. It's really a pleasure to participate in your podcasts. I've been watching a few of them and really good insight and content. And I think you're doing a great job for the data community.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And I think, just shout out to the data community itself, always wanting to be involved in these things. I think that's what I've found over the last 6-7 years of being in this space, is that people are just so willing to share their thoughts, their insights, some of the things that they've got wrong, and just in general, share knowledge with the community, which I think is why it's grown so much. I mean, how have you seen the community and so I guess the maturity of data analytics grow over the last 5 or 6 years?
It's definitely taken a huge step up. I think the complexities of data, the use of data, the processing of data, the storage of data, data as an asset is becoming more and more important, not just from a curation perspective, but from a usage point of view. It's becoming a pivotal point of every organization. So the data-driven decision organization, sort of slogan that's being put out there, it's truly picking up in terms of just because of the sheer volumes of data and the variety of the data. I'm not talking about big data in the sense. It's how crucially it's becoming important for organizations and management and leaders and executives to literally base their decisions on some solid, factual information, and really moving away from the gut feel. Being in the BI industry for over 20 years now, there's a huge shift from in terms of the maturity models, and that is also attributed to the evolution of technology, making all of this available and capable, enabling these businesses to do it. It's not about just storing data in its raw format, it's the processing and using advanced techniques and modeling, introducing AI, ML to assist with some of those decision-making and running those processes. So it's becoming a very complex environment.
Are you seeing, business users adopting data and insights and analytics a lot more? It's not just the domain of the data office anymore, the BI team. It's really this sort of self-service BI analytics, citizen data scientists, that sort of environment. So are you seeing that growing? I've noticed it a lot more, especially over the last 18 months. I think people working from home and remotely and everything has really driven that adoption.
Absolutely. And it also varies from organization to organization. There's some organizations and even people from a data literacy perspective are at different stages within their sort of analytical maturity journey. So definitely huge uptake in financial sector. We're seeing the retail space really getting into the nuts and the bolts and using these advanced, because the data science and machine learning is not new. The actuaries learned this stuff many years ago, but it's become so mainstream, and a lot of organizations are adopting these things. So yes, still various strokes for different folks in that sense, but it's been leaning towards adoption a lot more, and the dependency on it is becoming so it's not just the buzzword mainstream, it's becoming core to the data world.
Yeah, and I think that's a good term, the dependency on data, because I think it shows that there's real value and there's a need to use it. Whereas it used to maybe be a bit of a nice to have, it's kind of complementary to what it is that we're doing in our own business. So now we actually depend on data, the insights from that data to actually make better business decisions for the business itself, or customer, you name it.
Yeah. It's still very much an enabler.
Yeah.
And it's the enabler of that decision making. To wrap it up nicely in context, it's it's the crutch, it's becoming the dependency. Without it, a gut feel decision is definitely not going to cut it today, you know, unless you're some wizard or something. You can be able to do this. But yes, you know, and this is where the technology is also becoming very important. A while back, I did an article around some predictions in terms of what this landscape is going to look like from a technology point of view. Because business is demanding this data, you know, it's not IT giving it to them anymore. They're going to IT and say, I want more, and I need, you know. So, so the job of IT is becoming very difficult in the sense of I'm going to process all this data. I've got to be agile enough to adopt to it, because as business changes, or the business environment changes, or the operating environment changes, I need to make adjustments, and I need data in different ways. So this leads to the capabilities of the technology, and the mainstream, let's call them the mainstream guys who have these packaged solutions, you know, they are starting to be challenged by this demand from a technology perspective. So it boils down to a lot of niche players that have surfaced.
I mean, so that's your prediction. Number one, right, is the rise of the niche player.
That's right. So they are definitely, they focus on specific issues, addressing specific challenges within the data landscape. May it be ETL process or ingestion processes. They have focused only on that area and improved it so that, you know, ingestion is like super fast, and they've optimized where the sort of package solution guys are generalists in that sense. So they've got bits and pieces. Yes, it works. Make no doubt about it. There's no secret. It works, but the effectiveness and the efficiency is becoming crucially important. So I always use the analogy of a bucket of Lego blocks. And I use it in the context of cloud or anything like that. Literally, it's becoming, you've got this bucket of Lego blocks, you throw the blocks out on the table, then you pick the best parts to build whatever you are setting up, which is your business strategy. It may be a boat or a truck or a house or something, you know, from the Lego block. And you can repurpose that Lego block in any of those verticals, but it's the best block that fits in where you want to use it. And that's where the niche player comes in. They become part of this ecosystem where if I need to start streaming data, I need to get it in like super fast. So I need a very slick tool to do that. And doing a legacy or traditional ETL loading process is not going to cut it, because when we go back to the beginning of the conversation, it's just the volume and the variety of the data that's changing, and the business wants more and they want it faster. So that's where these niche players are really hitting it on the nail in focusing in specific things. So that was the first prediction of these niche players. I think in the landscapes, it's contradictory to from a cost management perspective, because typically what an organization wants to do, it wants to standardize on technologies. It wants to reduce the number of technologies from a footprint perspective, because the skills component comes into play. So I've got to have an expert or in each one of those new techs that I'm putting down, which means my headcount increases, because I can't find this in one person. Until we, as a IT sector, as a skill sector, have gotten to that maturity where, let's call ourselves generalists again, because I can work with these 20 technologies and can hire one person. At this stage, it's very segmented in that sense. So it's challenging. It's literally challenging. But I'm pretty sure as we adopt and grow, it will find its way.
I was going to ask around the complexity of that, of having, you know, various different technology providers in your stack. I mean, you need the skills, it adds complexity. Obviously, there's cost, there's different sort of vendor management agreements. There must be a fairly strong sort of, you know, benefit to the whole thing to make it worthwhile.
Yeah. So, and again, it was another piece that I did also a while back in terms of addressing the skills issue.
Yeah.
And this is where organizations must come to the realization that they're not going to find that perfect skill set out there for these technologies.
Yeah.
It's usually going to find the best half-baked cake.
Yeah.
So get the skills or resources that actually fit 70% of your requirement and develop the rest of the 30%.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to fulfill the skills gap. Because of the variety and what the niche players are also bringing to the table is that, from a challenge point of view, is that there are many of them. So you might go to one company and they've got these 7 technologies, and you go to another company and they've got a whole different set of 7 technologies. So that's going to be challenging in a sense from that point of view. And each with its own merit.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to see what actually happens for the entire landscape going forward.
No, for sure. All right, let's move on to the second prediction, Jacques, that you had, and it's all around really data protection, risk, compliance, etc. I mean, this is huge topic at the moment is data protection. Obviously, we've seen government hacks this week, various other things going on, constantly seeing breaches. What is your sort of thoughts around the prediction of, data protection, compliance, etc.?
So again, it's because even if we go back a couple of years when there was the rise of the cloud,
yeah,
I mean these were already major questions being asked in terms of, is it secure? We're typically finding from a South African perspective, as the hyperscalers are penetrating the country and putting down the data centers here.
Yeah.
But a lot of customers are actually still processing their data in Europe, primarily Ireland or somewhere. But they have to comply to protection data, POPIA, all that kind of stuff. And it makes it very difficult for them. So as long as you, let's call it, put up the guardrails from a penetration perspective and ensure that you have, it's like an onion, you've got these security layers to these environments. That is literally the answer, but achieving it is very difficult to do. Because I think, because the legislation is new, I'm not talking about just the hackers getting in and stealing data.
Yeah.
I mean, the understanding from what it means to me as a business. Yes, somebody can steal my data, but what are my legal issues that I'm going to face from that perspective when this data comes out? Penalties are huge, right? So it's not just the loss of data; it's the cost of the loss of the data from a legal perspective. And the only way to try and secure it is to comply, have the necessary technologies in place that can monitor these environments, typically intrusion detection capabilities of these sorts, because literally it's the onion. You've got your outer perimeter, then another perimeter, and you've got to lock it down right down to almost the data element in the database point of view. Yeah. Because these hackers are smart, man. They really get around.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then and it's not just the external threat.
The internal as well.
It's the internal company threat from employees. Not that you don't trust them, but there are a couple of guys that can be a bit malicious in terms of. And unfortunately, in South Africa, corruption is rife. It can take any shape or form, and it can literally be in your organization from a data point of view. So having these layers, this is where you start sort of segregating, putting up the Chinese walls between your development, QA, and production environments, data anonymization, obfuscation, using those techniques right down at the data element level, so to prevent the stuff from happening.
I think even outside of the malicious employee acts is really, a lot of the times it's almost just ignorance or unawareness around what it is that they can share, leaving a laptop open, working at a coffee shop. So a lot of it is really just about cybersecurity awareness, right? It's not necessarily that's it. I'm being pushed out of this company, therefore I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I think sometimes it's just, I didn't know that I couldn't share that data, or I sent someone a spreadsheet I shouldn't have. So a lot of it really just comes down to education at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, that can start literally from when you onboard your employees as part of the induction process.
Yeah.
Because you do make, I always try to look at things in a very simplistic way, because I think the simpler the things are, the easier it is.
Yeah.
It's part of that education process in terms of, so let's actually go through a data security, a data protection familiarization process, so that you actually do understand what the consequences are of you even unbeknowingly sending somebody a data file. I mean, but you need just to realize what the actual implications could be, so that people are very aware of what the ramifications are of doing that, because they could be doing it completely out of innocence, but it's got a knock-on effect, so that people just become aware of that. I mean, that's at the lowest level. And it's like anything else. It's like instilling a culture in an organization. You start doing it slowly but surely, and at least everybody becomes aware of this. Then, theoretically speaking, you should be able to have more diligent people when it comes to working with your data.
Yeah.
And it makes your jobs easier. Yes, it doesn't take away the monitoring and the penetration testing and all that kind of stuff. Those guardrails need to be up. But I think you're reducing the risk significantly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, Jacques, let's move on to your third and final prediction, which is a shift away from a focus on big data to right data. Now, big data has been a term that's been around for a really long time, and a lot of people understood it in the beginning, but now it's kind of really just seen as unstructured data, and it could be different sort of forms. But you kind of talk about moving to right data. What do you mean by that?
So it sort of alludes to the fact that, and going back to the point where you say in the beginning, everybody understood there were 3 V's, and then the V's evolved, and then there were more V's, and adding more complexity to it. Yeah. It sort of it basically alludes to the point where you stop becoming a data hoarder. I've got all this data for the sake of having it, and maybe I'll get the time to dig into it and try and find some potential useful insights and stuff like that. So that has industry-wide has proven itself as a very costly and waste of time to doing that, because you're literally mining this data with actually not knowing what you're looking for. So where the right data is, when you look at it from, let's understand from a business strategy, a data strategy, and our data governance and our data management framework in terms of what it is. All about the one enabling the other. Business strategy enables data strategy, enables the data management side, and it supports it back up. That narrows down in terms of what we need from a
All right, so sorry there, folks. We had a little bit of a break in transmission, one of those things with Wi-Fi. So you're kind of there talking, just to kind of recap, Jacques, around having a strategy behind data usage within the organization. Otherwise, people don't really know, why are we collecting this data? Why are we processing this data? So the key thing, I guess, there is to have a data strategy that aligns to the business strategy for the best outcomes.
Yeah, and those data sets or data requirements, they're not driven by the business strategy.
Yeah,
it's not just because storage is cheap and we can save petabytes of data. Yeah, that could be because you've got to rule out the potential of that data actually being irrelevant to the organization. It doesn't enable the business at all. Yes, you've got it, you can get some insights, but is it valuable in the sense of driving out the strategy?
Absolutely.
It's literally it's if we look at these concepts, in terms of where of how this flows between those strategies, it narrows down, because big data, in the sense of just, it's not a fishing expedition where you go cast out this wide net to catch, as the fish and different varieties of fish. it's got to be a spearheaded, spear gun approach to it. I need, because we need to. It's when it's speaking to the agility of a business.
Mm.
You know, if we focus and get things done in the way we need to support them from the business, then we are focusing on the right stuff. The cost, we're managing the costs more effectively.
Yeah.
We're not just wasting it around on all other kind of peripheral stuff.
Mm.
And then that's what essentially important from, yes, it's big data from a volume and a velocity perspective. But do we need the variety of the data? Maybe not. We need specific stuff that's going to help us grow as a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen over the past, again, probably the last 12 to 18 months really, is a real sort of, I guess, overlapping of the data strategy with the business strategy. Because I think for a long time, people say, oh, we don't have a data strategy, or we have a data strategy. I'm like, well, is it actually just an integral part of your whole business strategy? They're like, no, it's kind of separate. But I think now as people are maturing, a lot of it is now coming where it really is something that's going to drive the business strategy. It's all data driven at the end of the day, which is kind of talked about at the top of the call. But I am constantly seeing this move towards these being almost one in the same, or one enables the other.
Because literally, the technology discussion cannot happen in isolation of the other three.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of IT spend has gone, where technology decisions were made in the absence of understanding what the actual data strategy and business strategy is.
Yeah.
So IT spend went through the roof. And I think because things are so tight with organizations globally, it just makes sense to take it from a focused approach.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good stuff. All right, Jacques, well, thank you so much for sharing your predictions with us. We'll touch base in a few months' time, see how true those have kind of turned out to be. But the other thing that we're doing together is in 15th of June, the IntelliNexus and Snowflake Future of the Data Cloud event up here in Joburg, a nice breakfast event.
Yeah, we're absolutely looking for, very excited, to even having a customer story, showing implementation and value out of that environment, and literally how it's really enabling their business. And Pick n Pay have also recently made some big announcements in the press, and these are all supportive of those initiatives. In terms of, it was great to be part of that underlying journey in the trenches, but actually visibly seeing how they are adjusting their sales, so to say. The public domain. Very, very excited for that event, and it's not to be missed by people. They must really register.
Absolutely. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. Free to attend, breakfast, come listen to Pick n Pay, Jacques himself, and also Chris from Snowflake. But Jacques, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time and your insight.
Awesome. Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Craig. Have a great day. Thank you.